For individuals over 60, this message could be a life-changing moment. Stroke, a treacherous disease, often strikes without warning. One moment, a person feels full of strength and energy. The next, their speech might become slurred, a limb may stop responding, or memory could suddenly vanish. Neurologists, observing their patients, too often see how older adults unintentionally harm themselves by following morning routines they mistakenly believe are beneficial. Notably, some of the most dangerous stroke-provoking factors emerge during morning physical activities. The reason lies not in the movement itself, but in how, when, and what exactly happens to the body during and after exercise. Encouragingly, the vast majority of strokes are preventable, provided one is aware of the potential dangers. This article will detail 5 key mistakes older adults make during morning exercise, unknowingly tripling their stroke risk. These misconceptions are widespread, often even encouraged, and tragically underestimated. By reading to the end of this narrative, you will gain valuable knowledge on how to protect your brain daily, starting tomorrow morning. Let's begin our deep dive into the first hidden threat, starting physical exercise too quickly right after waking up. 1. Exercising immediately after waking up without prior preparation. One recent Wednesday, at precisely 7:05 a.m., a 71-year-old patient was admitted to the neurology department. He had suddenly collapsed during a brisk walk around his neighborhood. He believed he was living a healthy lifestyle, waking early and going for an invigorating walk, aiming to start his day energetically. Unbeknownst to him, that very morning, he had unknowingly created the conditions for a mini stroke. The patient had gotten out of bed too quickly, neglected to drink water, and immediately stepped outside into the cold air. Within minutes, he felt severe dizziness, lost his balance, and his left leg suddenly became unresponsive. A neighbor found him lying on the sidewalk, disoriented and with slurred speech. Such incidents occur far more frequently than commonly believed. After age 60, the body's internal regulatory systems, especially blood pressure, heart rate, and cerebral blood flow, slow down and become more vulnerable. Upon waking, the body is still transitioning from a state of deep rest. Blood pressure remains low, blood vessels are relaxed, and the brain has not yet received a full oxygen supply. A sudden transition from a horizontal position to quickly standing up and immediately starting physical activity is like trying to make a cold engine go from 0 to 60 without warming up. Rapid changes in body position, particularly common in older adults, trigger orthostatic hypotension, a critical drop in blood pressure. For individuals with narrowed vessels, this can lead to such a significant reduction in blood flow to the brain that it's enough to provoke a mini stroke or even a full ischemic attack. Yet, this dangerous mistake is repeated day after day, every morning. The price for such neglect can be the loss of speech, memory, mobility, the ability to smile, or even recognizing loved ones. One moment, a person feels perfectly healthy. The next, they lose control over half their body, possibly forever. The most regrettable part is that such a tragedy is entirely preventable. The answer to this problem is not to completely abandon physical activity, but to deeply respect the natural rhythms of an aging body. Upon waking, it is crucial to allow time for a gradual transition. Sit on the edge of the bed for at least 90 seconds. During this brief but significant period, focus on slow, deep breathing. It's also recommended to perform gentle movements, such as ankle rotations and wiggling your toes, and then take a few sips of water. These simple actions allow the circulatory system to gradually adapt to changes in body position and the effects of gravity before you begin walking or stretching. This small act of patience can grant a person additional years of independent and fulfilling life. It's important to remember that the brain does not tolerate haste. It doesn't care if you're late for your morning walk or try to avoid the scorching summer heat. The brain only needs a stable oxygen supply, internal stability, and uninterrupted blood flow. If you provide these conditions, it will generously reward you with clarity of thought and vitality. Ignoring these needs, however, can lead to a tragic silence when it's already too late. 2. Fast, shallow breathing during morning exercise. Among the patients I've worked with, a 68-year-old former teacher stood out for her exceptional discipline. Every morning, precisely at 6:30 a.m., she would go for a walk, strictly adhered to a healthy diet, and completely abstain from smoking and alcohol. At first glance, it seemed she was doing everything perfectly to maintain her health. However, one morning, during her usual walk, she suddenly collapsed right on her driveway. Her vision blurred, speech became slurred, and her right arm went numb. Her husband immediately called an ambulance, and that's when the neurologist first met this patient. The diagnosis was clear: a transient ischemic attack, or TI, also known as a mini-stroke. The cause of this condition was not her diet or heart problems, but, paradoxically, her breathing pattern. She was unknowingly making a common mistake that millions of older adults commit daily. During her brisk walks, she breathed too frequently and shallowly. With each step, her breaths became shorter and more rapid. The woman believed she was simply exerting more effort, but in reality, her brain was experiencing a severe lack of oxygen. With age, blood vessels lose their natural elasticity, lungs become less efficient at gas exchange, and the brain, in turn, shows increased sensitivity even to minor drops in oxygen levels. Fast, shallow breathing, medically termed chest breathing, leads to inefficient oxygen exchange. This, in turn, forces the heart to work harder, causes blood vessels to constrict, and disrupts normal blood circulation in the brain. For individuals over 60, such a state can easily lead to a dangerous zone: irregular heart rhythms, sudden spikes in blood pressure, or even the formation of a clot capable of reaching the brain. Breathing seems automatic and uncontrolled. Yet during physical exercise, especially in the morning when the body is least prepared for exertion, how one breathes becomes a matter of life and death. One might mistakenly believe they are acting for their health, but in reality, they are creating a silent storm in their bloodstream that can permanently deprive them of memory, speech, or mobility. The tragedy is that no one explained to this woman that the brain, like water and blood, needs deep, measured breathing. When one breathes rapidly, the body perceives it as a stress signal, and for an aging heart and brain, this false signal can cause real and irreparable damage. The solution to this problem is surprisingly simple, but unfortunately, most people are unaware of it or don't give it importance. During exercise, one should inhale deeply through the nose and exhale slowly through the mouth. It's essential to synchronize movements, taking slow, rhythmic steps that match your breathing. If you start to gasp for breath, it's a clear sign you're exerting too much effort. Morning exercises are meant to nourish the brain, not shock it. Strokes often occur not during the workout itself, but afterward, when the body suffers from insufficient oxygen supply and unstable blood pressure. It's important to remember that once brain cells die, they unfortunately do not regenerate. Neurologists often remind their patients, if you're walking to live longer, breathe as if your life depends on it, because it truly does. 3. Exercising in the cold without protection. It was a frosty February morning when a 73-year-old patient, a veteran known for his unwavering belief in overcoming discomfort, was admitted to the clinic. Every day, rain or shine, he would put on his sneakers and go for a walk, covering 3 blocks around his neighborhood. He never used gloves, a scarf, or did any warm-up beforehand. The man was convinced that cold air strengthened the body, but on that fateful morning, the cold didn't strengthen him. It nearly took his life. Halfway through his usual walk, he suddenly started gasping for breath, then felt severe dizziness. By the time he managed to reach his front porch, his speech was slurred, and his right arm was completely numb. His wife, instantly recognizing the alarming signs, immediately called an ambulance. The veteran had suffered an ischemic stroke, triggered by exposure to cold, which caused a sudden constriction of blood vessels in response to the low ambient temperature. Such stories, unfortunately, are not uncommon. Statistics show that stroke incidence significantly increases during colder months, especially in the early morning hours. The reason is that low temperatures don't just cause discomfort. They pose a serious danger to the aging body. With age, blood vessels lose their natural elasticity. Cold causes them to constrict sharply, leading to increased blood pressure and impaired circulation. This sudden constriction forces the heart to work harder. And if the brain's blood vessels are already narrowed or weakened, even a slight spike in pressure can trigger a rupture or blockage. Morning is the riskiest time of day. The body is already in a vulnerable state. Blood is thicker due to overnight dehydration, heart rate is lower, and circulation is slower. Add to this cold air, stiff joints, and a lack of adequate warm clothing, and you create a perfect storm inside the body, especially if you're over 60. The danger is compounded by the illusion that one is doing something beneficial for their health. They are moving, staying active, and that is certainly commendable. However, venturing out into the cold in just a sweatshirt and sneakers, especially without warming up first, puts your brain at serious risk, even if you don't realize it. Neurologists have encountered patients who lost speech, coordination, and even independence due to a 5-minute walk in unsuitable conditions. The solution is not to stop exercising entirely, but to approach it more wisely. Always check the outdoor temperature before heading out. If it drops below 8 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 13 degrees Celsius, consider postponing your walk or exercising indoors. Always wear layers and thoroughly cover your head and hands. Be sure to warm up indoors for 5 to 10 minutes before going out into the cold. Your brain, heart, and future will thank you for such foresight. That patient survived, but now cannot move without a cane. He requires constant speech therapy, and each time he repeats the same phrase, "If only I had worn a hat, if only I had waited an hour, I wouldn't be like this." Cold can be merciless. It doesn't scream its danger. It silently infiltrates the bloodstream and constricts all vessels until something breaks. Don't let the morning cold become your last solitary walk. 4. Not drinking water before or after morning exercise. A 76-year-old patient who survived what she initially considered a random stroke was an active and cheerful woman who went for a walk every morning after feeding the birds. However, like many older adults, she followed a habit she never thought about: waking up, putting on her shoes, and immediately going for her walk without taking a single sip of water. This seemingly minor detail cost her far more than she could have imagined. One morning, about 15 minutes in her walk, she suddenly felt severe dizziness, lost her balance, and her vision blurred. She managed to get home, but by the time she sat down, her speech had already begun to slur. Tests and scans revealed a mini stroke, and blood test results showed thickened blood and mild dehydration. She didn't know that skipping a simple glass of water every morning was slowly but surely increasing her stroke risk. With age, the natural sensation of thirst dulls. Even if the body needs hydration, one doesn't always feel it. After a night's sleep, during which the body received no fluids for 6 to 8 hours, blood becomes slightly thicker, blood pressure is more unstable, and the heart has to work harder to pump blood to the brain. Now, imagine engaging in physical activity, even a light walk, in such a state. This is exactly what she did every week, and she's not alone. Thousands of older adults start their day dehydrated, placing immense strain on their cardiovascular system, especially in the morning when blood pressure naturally tends to rise. Dehydration leads to the constriction of blood vessels and reduced oxygen supply to the brain, 2 key factors that can directly trigger a stroke. And if one is taking diuretics or blood pressure medication, this effect is amplified tenfold. The danger lies not in what one feels, but in what one doesn't feel. You might feel perfectly normal, without a headache or dry mouth, yet your brain, heart, and entire circulatory system are working much harder than they should, simply due to a lack of fluids. The patient fully recovered, but only after several months of intensive physical therapy. Her left hand still trembles slightly when she lifts a glass, a daily reminder that one simple habit could have prevented this tragedy. For an aging brain, water is not just an extra element. It is vital fuel, a continuous flow, and a guarantee of survival. Every patient hears the same truth from neurologists. If you engage in physical activity without enough water in your body, you are walking towards a risk that remains invisible to you. You must drink a full glass of room temperature water before starting your walk, and then another after completing it. This won't take much time, but it can protect your brain for years to come. 5. Inconsistent exercise. Overexertion on some days, skipping on others. The crux of the problem lies not only in what one does in the mornings, but also in how consistently they do it. Drastic fluctuations between overly intense and overly negligible physical activity, especially after age 60, can place far greater strain on the heart than commonly believed. Inconsistent workouts can shock the heart and put unexpected pressure on the brain. A 70-year-old patient, a former construction crew leader, prided himself on his work ethic and, more importantly, on his decision to start morning walks after his cardiologist recommended he be more active. However, like many people his age, he fell into a dangerous trap. He exercised when he felt fit, and on those days, he pushed himself hard, trying to make up for lost time. For a week or two, he would walk briskly, stretch for a long time, feel good, but then get tired and skip several days. Afterward, guilt would drive him back to exercising, and he'd push even harder on his next walk, sometimes doubling the distance. He believed he was being responsible, but he wasn't giving his aging heart and vessels what they desperately needed: consistency. One Tuesday morning, after returning from a brisk 45-minute walk, twice his usual distance, he collapsed in the kitchen. His wife found him. He was conscious but disoriented, unable to lift his right arm. He had suffered a mild stroke. Analyzing his medical history, neurologists identified a common and often hidden pattern: sharp fluctuations in blood pressure. His heart, accustomed to moderate activity, was being battered by sudden bursts of overexertion. These irregular rhythms stress blood vessels, increase inflammation, and create ideal conditions for blood clots or vessel ruptures in the brain. Most people don't realize that inconsistency in exercise is just as dangerous as complete inactivity. The human body, especially after 60, thrives on rhythm and regularity, not on excessive intensity. Older adults often mistakenly believe that more is better. However, when one transitions from complete inactivity to high-intensity movements, they're not strengthening their body. Instead, they're subjecting their heart and brain to an attack. Sudden intense exertion causes a rapid increase in blood pressure, often exceeding what stiff, aging arteries can withstand. Furthermore, the cardiovascular system in older adults recovers more slowly, meaning damage is delayed, and with it, the risk of stroke and other heart problems increases. The patient is currently recovering but moves more slowly than before. He regrets not treating his morning walks like safety matters, with careful preparation, a strict routine, and respect for his own physical limits. If you exercise to live longer, you must move in a way that supports your heart, not shocks it. This means short, regular movements every day, not heroic bursts of sweat followed by days spent on the couch. Exercise should be viewed as medicine, the right dose at the right time every day. Not too little and not too much. 6. Skipping or misusing medication after morning exercise. Here's a harsh truth to grasp. Stroke risk is determined not only by one's physical activity level, but also by how one recovers afterward. This brings us to a mistake that occurs after the walk, when one returns home, cools down, and makes one small, yet potentially deadly, error related to medication. Just 3 months ago, a 74-year-old patient, a widowed woman who prided herself on her independence and handled everything herself, was admitted to the clinic. Every morning, she would walk 3 loops around her quiet suburb, then sit down for a cup of coffee. Her blood pressure pills were on the table, but she often skipped taking them. "I feel fine today," she would tell herself, justifying her decision. "Why take it if I'm okay?" she reasoned. This patient was admitted to the clinic after a moderate stroke that severely affected her speech and coordination. When a neurologist inquired about her morning routine, she admitted she didn't always take her medication or would do so hours after waking, depending on her mood. And on days she exercised, she often thought, well, maybe I don't need my medication if I've already moved. This is one of the most dangerous misconceptions often found among older adults. After 60, the body no longer regulates itself as efficiently as it did in youth. Blood pressure fluctuates more rapidly. The heart reacts more sensitively to exertion, and the brain becomes vulnerable even to minor interruptions in blood flow. When one skips blood pressure medication, especially in the morning when pressure naturally tends to rise, they allow their arteries to experience a dangerous spike. If blood thinners or cholesterol-lowering medications are taken inconsistently, the risk of clot formation in the vessels vital for brain function increases. Add to this post-workout dehydration or an adrenaline surge, and one unknowingly creates ideal conditions for a stroke. Medications are not optional based on how one feels. They are designed to prevent what isn't yet felt: silent damage accumulating in vessels, plaque forming on artery walls, or unstable heart rhythms that manifest when it's already too late. The patient now takes her pills on time, but with the help of a special organizer and alarms, because her memory and part of her independence were taken by a decision she considered harmless. Neurologists tell every patient, you lock your doors at night, regardless of whether you expect danger. You take your medication in the morning for the same reason, because the threat is already there. Your morning habits write your brain's future. Every morning, the human brain wakes up just like the person themselves, slowly, delicately, needing protection. Yet, most strokes observed in people over 60 are not the result of chance or bad luck. They're the outcome of daily habits that seem harmless, even beneficial, but quietly erode the brain's defenses. Getting out of bed too quickly before your body adapts, fast and shallow breathing during exercise, venturing into the cold without adequate protection, skipping water, exercising in bursts without rhythm, and worst of all, skipping or misusing medication. These are not minor oversights. These are mistakes that quietly accumulate over months and years. Until one day, speech begins to slur, an arm stops moving, or memory starts to slip away. The saddest truth is that almost all of this is preventable. Your brain doesn't need heroic workouts or perfect diets. It needs consistency, care, and respect. A slow rise in the morning, deep rhythmic breathing, gentle movement every day, not just when it's convenient. A full glass of water, a warm scarf, a pill taken on time, even if you feel fine. These small acts may not seem powerful, but for an aging brain, they're the difference between clarity and confusion, independence and dependence, life before and after a stroke. Neurologists have seen the price of ignoring these habits in faces that no longer recognize loved ones, in hands that cannot care for themselves, in voices silenced too soon. But they have also seen the power of awareness and small, targeted changes. They have watched patients return stronger, clearer, and more confident, simply by reclaiming control over their mornings. Your brain doesn't care what day it is. It only cares what you do with it. Every choice made before 9 a.m. sets the tone for your blood pressure, circulation, memory, and mood. You don't need to be perfect. Just be mindful, consistent, and gentle with yourself. Stroke doesn't knock on the door or announce its arrival. But if you listen carefully to your body every morning, you'll hear the whispers long before the scream. And that awareness is your true medicine. These valuable lessons are meant to inspire everyone to live a full and authentic life. It's important to deeply reflect on the knowledge gained and carefully consider how to apply it in your daily life. On this path to understanding and embracing these truths, mutual support is crucial. Sincere gratitude is extended for your attention, and the wish is to live according to your own principles and terms.